Today we're very, very lucky to have the lovely Jennifer Walsh, who has written Tunnels of Tarcoola. So congratulations on the book, Jennifer, it's magnificent. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I'm not going to tell you the story because that's going to spoil it, but it's a mystery adventure book. It's set in Balmain just because it's the sort of area that I know, it's a typical old inner suburb. And it's about 4 children who make an unusual discovery and decide that they want to explore a bit more and find out things, but they end up finding out a lot more than they expected about things that they didn't think they were going to be interested in.
Oh, very good. Now, a lot of people who've been living in Sydney forever are completely unaware of these tunnels. How did you find out about them?
There was a little pamphlet somewhere which I read about the coal mines, and also, in fact, several years ago, really before the time frame of this story, there was a housing development which was placed over the shafts, and there was a little bit of publicity about it at the time. I found it quite poignant, really, that the entrance to this old coal mine, which few people knew about, was about to be covered up forever so that nobody would be able to go down and explore it at all. And in fact that happened. There is a housing development right on top of it, that entrance now. But at the time I just read a little bit about the coal mines and was fascinated by the whole idea of tunnels under our feet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also love the names of the shafts, and in a way the names inspired some of the story, because the 2 entry shafts were called Birthday and Jubilee. And I thought, what if somebody was talking about something called Birthday and nobody really knew what they were talking about, because that's what was on their mind. So in fact, when I first wrote this book, my working title was Not My Birthday.
Okay.
I put a lot more emphasis on Kitty, one of the girls, meeting the old lady early in the story, and the old lady saying, "Don't ask me about my birthday, I'm not going to tell you about my birthday." But we kind of thought that was good.
I love Tunnels of Tarcoola.
Yeah.
So one of the things I loved about it reminded me of adventure books that I read growing up, and a lot of people have been comparing this to Enid Blyton. Are you getting sick of being compared to Enid Blyton?
I think at first I was quite dismayed when people mentioned Enid Blyton, particularly because there was a period of time when Enid Blyton was really out of favour. But then I thought, well, if that's what people think, I'm just going to have to go with it. And when I was young, I devoured Enid Blyton. I couldn't get enough. And so I thought, what is it about Enid Blyton that is positive in terms of my writing? And it's really that she wrote adventures about children who somehow or other seem to have the freedom to have these adventures. And when I think about the ones that I particularly liked, the more serious ones where children got into a bit more danger, they're my favourites. But I had always thought that I'd like to write children's books which are set in a very recognisable world. All the books I read as a child, almost all of them were English for a start, so they were set in a world that really was nothing to do with me. And I would try to kind of put myself into that story to imagine that I could have an adventure like that. But it was difficult because the environment was not a familiar one. So I always thought it would be nice to start with recognisable, normal people in a familiar environment and then have interesting things happen to them. So that's really why I was a bit dismayed at the Enid Blyton comparison, because I've always thought, these terribly twee, terribly English children
she
running
still
around with torches.
sells as much as all the new release stuff, so yeah.
Right, yeah, well, if it's the mystery adventure part of it, then I'll accept that.
Okay, cool. You've also managed to squeeze quite a lot into the story, because the 4 main characters have all got their own sub-stories going on, and you've got references to the way the Jews were treated in the Second World War. There's submarines in the harbour. You've managed to squeeze quite a lot in. What's your secret for not making it for it all coming together?
Oh well, it's it's very calculated in that I wanted the elements which turn out to provide the solution to the mystery were things that I was really interested in and that I had decided right up front I wanted to have in the story. So I basically worked out what the mystery was and what the answer was going to be before I started. And then I discovered there's a bit of an art to writing a mystery. This was the first one I attempted because the writer has to know exactly what's going on and how it's going to end, but you don't want to make that obvious, of course, but you don't want to make it too obscure either. You don't want the reader at the end saying, oh, that's not fair, I have no idea, I couldn't have guessed that. So you just got to find this little fine line between what you want to give away and what you want to reserve for later. So that was a lot of fun. But there's something about Balmain, this sort of sense of history there, and also there are wonderful old characters there. I wanted to include a number of old people because they've got their own point of view of the world, which is pretty different from ours, but also they have their memories. So I wanted the mystery to be related to something that happened a long time ago, that these old people would remember that nobody else would. And I thought about interesting things that had happened. In fact, we did have some neighbours. There's an old man in the story called Cess who walks his very fat dog around the streets. He's really based very directly on an old neighbour that we had who did just that with a dog called Peaches. The funniest looking thing. And his wife told me about the time that the Japanese submarines came in and how scared everybody was and how she hid under the table with her sisters. So
wow.
I wanted to include that in the story.
Okay, brilliant. There's been a big break between your last book, was it Mr. Shy's Shoes?
Yeah.
We're not going to have to wait that long for the next...
Certainly not at all. I'm surprised that you even know about Mr. Shy's Shoes. I wrote it a long time ago, and it was a wonderful experience, and I was really happy about it. But then I basically had to go off and work in a very demanding job for many years, and I just didn't have the time or energy to write. So instead, I just kind of composed stories in my head, and this is one of them. So as soon as I got freedom to write, I wrote this one because I'd already worked out the main elements of it.
So are you working on anything at the moment?
Yes, right now I'm actually writing a sequel to this. It's
Woo!
a completely different story, but it's got the same main characters.
There's going to be lots of happy kids about that one, and grown-ups as well. So you've got lots of kids downstairs dying to meet you, so we might finish there, and thank you very much for coming in. Thanks for coming to Shearers.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.